Welcome back you guys, I'm FC, this is Blue Lions TV, and welcome to another news daily video where I'm going to focus on the reports coming out from Gazzetta dello Sport suggesting that there are 3 players that we're looking at for this January. Those 3 players are Lewis Cook from Bournemouth, Emmanuel Vignato from Chievo, and to end things, Malinovskiy from Atalanta. I'm going to break down who these players are, what they can offer, and why we'd be looking at these guys in the first place. Before I can get into things though, today's video is brought to you by the One Football app. If you guys want to download the One Football app, you're going to get an app that's going to help you find the news, stats and information you want. I feel like the user setup is quite easy to use. It takes a tiny bit of time to get familiar with how the app works, but once you do, you'll constantly be using the app to get quick bite-sized information whenever you need it. So if you guys want to download the One Football app, you'll find it in the link in the description below. Now for the first player that I do focus on, that's going to be none other than Ruslan Malinovskiy from Atalanta. Now Atalanta signed him from Genk for 13.5 million euros. And Sports Arena are the publication that broke the story first. Now the reason why there's interest with us and the player comes down to Claude Makelele. And I'm going to show you guys some segments from his recent interview where he spoke in very high praise towards the player. Now Makelele was recently at the Ukraine versus where you got to see Ruslan up front and personal, and it suggested that Maka is personally recommending the player to the club. Now here are some of the quotes that Claude was reported to have said. He said that he's going to speak to Lampard about the player. He likes that Malinovskiy is very elegant on the ball. He does the right things. He's very positive from an attacking point of view, and he feels that with Malinovskiy, Jorginho and Kante, we would have a great midfield 3. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Is Makelele already forgotten about Ruben? I mean, personally, Makelele is a great player, so I'm going to trust his judgment on the player. Now, Malinovskiy is a player that I've heard of, but I don't personally know too much about him, so I had to do a lot of research to get an understanding of how he plays and what style of player he is. Now, I've got my information from websites like StatsBomb, and they're stating that Malinovskiy is a guy that has a great left foot. He can play in a variety of positions in midfield. He can play in a midfield pivot, in a midfield 3, as an attacking mid as well. And from that perspective, you can kind of understand why Makelele would want the player to sign for the club. Malinovskiy has very good attacking output. He looks to play killer passes all the time. And he has that important ability where he can carry the ball and drive into the spaces. And because he's quite aggressive and strong, it means that he isn't losing possession of the ball in those moments. And the final reason why Ruslan is a player that Maka likes is because he's aggressive in nature. He's a player that isn't scared to get tough in the tackle, and when he has the ball at his feet, he's rarely losing possession of the ball. Most times when he's giving away possession of the ball is when he's attempting through ball passes. Now, if Malinovskiy was signed, who's he replacing in the team? I feel like he replaced Ross Barkley. You know, when you look at Ross Barkley and how Lampard's using him, we've seen Barkley play down the left-hand side as a cam and in central midfield as well, and that seems to be an area in which Malinovskiy could potentially replace Ross Barkley. Malinovskiy has shown this versatility throughout his career, and the reason why Atalanta signed him was because of his great season for Genk last season, where he got 16 goals and 16 assists in 51 appearances. Would he be an impossible signing to make? I'm not too sure. I don't personally feel like he'll be signed for the first team. We need to realise that Lampard does not have the ideal squad that he wants. And I feel like if we potentially sign the player for next summer, we're going to sign him to replace someone else in the team. And when you realise that he speaks very good English as well, he becomes a lot more attractive as a player. As I'm saying, you know, he has some decent attributes. He looks like a good football player. Of course, it's his first season in Serie A, playing in a difficult league, and it's not as if he's playing in every single game right now, but we know that with new signings, they need that period to acclimatise to a new league, country and team. From the sounds of things, he could be a very good utility player to have in the squad, but all I can tell you guys is monitor how he progresses for Atalanta this season, and let's reevaluate the player come the end of the season. Well, hold up you guys. If you do like today's video, do not forget to smash that like button. Help me get more than 2,000 likes for today's video. Now we continue on with things, moving on to the next report, and this report is focused on a young Italian player who happens to be half Brazilian and half Italian. His name is called Vignato, and he plays as a right winger or a second striker for Chievo in Serie B. Now, a journalist reported that we sent scouts to watch him play versus Chievo's game against Saltaneria, and we're not the only clubs potentially interested in the player. AC Milan, Inter Milan and Bayern Munich are 3 other clubs that are monitoring the player, and you might be thinking to yourselves right now, Nini, who exactly is Vignato? Now, last season he made his debut for Chievo when they happened to be back in Serie A, but since they moved back to Serie B, he's played 10 games, starting 8 and making 2 substitute appearances. He's a player that has a right foot, he has a very good engine, he's a player that prefers to press his opponents, and he's very good to have on the counter-attack. He makes the right decisions, and he's a player that understands where he needs to move off the ball. With Vignato, he seems to be a player that is able to play down the left-hand side as a cam and on the right-hand side as well. And with our high intensity style of football we play, it's no surprise why we're going to scout and monitor players that could fit the system. Still, I researched a player, and come on, it's not as if we're going to sign this guy and he's going to play in the first team. Of course not, but I kind of saw it from a different perspective. Now, one thing that's bound to happen is that the loan army is most definitely going to get a revamp. We understand that FIFA have imposed new regulations, meaning that clubs can't have ridiculous amounts of players on loan at the same time. It's not fair to the players, and personally I think it's a bit scummy. Now, from things that I've told you guys before, I told you that we're looking to use the loan army as a finishing school for highly promising players, and that's the best thing. You know, we can't make money having anyone just being part of the army. In the future, we won't be able to make tons of money because we won't have as many players. So if the strategy is to focus on using the loan army as a finishing school for highly promising players, that puts us in a very good position. Let's say, for example, that we signed Vignato, he's 19 years old, by the time he's fully assessed again, he's about 21, 22. Within that time, he's performing well for his loan clubs or loan club, and that way, we'd be able to focus more attention on the player to really look after him and to help him become the very best player he possibly can. Now, if you take these reports as us monitoring players for a future loan army, then yeah, this signing could make sense. And personally, I think this is the best way to go. You know, for me, if you're going to be loaned out, you need to be performing well and you have to be one of the best youngsters within the club. And using the loan army in this way would mean that we're going to be safe regardless. We sign the player for next to nothing, and if he's on point, if he does play well, then he has the possibility to come back to the squad or possibly back into the first team. And of course, if he doesn't work out, it means that we get a nice profit on the player, we move on and we find new targets. Now to end the video with the final player, that's going to be none other than Lewis Cook from Bournemouth. Now this report is coming out from this country as well, and they're stating that us and Liverpool are both actively interested in monitoring the player. Remember, I'm saying monitoring. And for a club of our size, of course we need to monitor players in every single position. He's had a massive reputation within this country's coaching setup, and it's no surprise why big clubs are still going to monitor the player, because currently he's been very unlucky with injuries, but if he recovers, if his form improves until the end of the season, then he becomes a very interesting player. Lewis Cook first made his name at Leeds. Since then he's done well for Bournemouth, but of course injuries have slowed down his progress. Now, what type of player is Lewis Cook? He plays in central midfield. He's another player that is versatile. He can play in different positions, he can play in a pivot, and he can play in a 3-man midfield. He's a guy that is confident on the ball. Very comfortable on the ball. He's comfortable at receiving the ball in any situation, and he's very good at progressing the play. On top of that, he breaks up play very well. You know, he gets like at least 2 to 3 tackles per game, which is very good for someone his age and his size. He has a good passing range as well, and on top of that, this guy has great stamina, meaning that he's very useful when it comes to playing in a high intensity style of football. Now, as I'm saying, does this mean that he's going to be signed and he's going to play in the first team? Of course not. As I'm stressing, I feel like this gives us an indication in regards to positions and the profile of player that we're looking at for the next window. Let's say that Lewis Cook is injury free this entire season, and he performs really well, then I have to say that he is an interesting player to look at, and it's no surprise why us or Liverpool would actively monitor the player. He's another player that could potentially replace a Ross Barkley or a Cover, as I'm stressing, it's hypothetical and in the future, and it depends on so many variables. But I think it's worth keeping an eye out for the player to see how he performs and how he progresses. And on that note, you guys, I'm going to wrap things up and keep things moving. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe. I'm janaury, this is Blue Lions TV. I'll catch you guys later for another video. Yes, you guys, and the reason why I'm releasing this little video is because I do want to apologize for yesterday's two videos. That was the player ratings video and the match review when it came to my assessment of Christian Pulisic. Now, of course, I feel like some of the things I said were still valid, but I think that maybe I wasn't so fair on the player. So for that reason, I'm going to be releasing the 5 talking points video later tomorrow instead, because I do want to watch the game again so I can get a fresh perspective on things and really reevaluate all my opinions. I still feel like with my opinions on those 2 moments I was talking about in yesterday's videos, they're still valid. I think that you can debate them, but I admit maybe I was a bit too dismissive on the rest of Pulisic's game. I'll let you guys know my process very quickly on how I make these videos. What I tend to do is, I'm watching the game, I've got the live stream which never works properly, it's constantly lagging every single time. I constantly need to refresh. On top of that, I'm making notes on the players, individual performances as well as tactics on top of that. And of course, I'm tweeting and I'm preparing for the match review later. It's a video process in which I've become accustomed to, and yesterday I think was a bit of a rusty moment for me, so I apologize for that. And you guys expect me to release the 5 talking points video tomorrow. So you guys expect me to release the talking points video for tomorrow.